So one of the perks I have as a rabbi is the amount of time I get to spend with couples before they get married. I have a chance to hear about their highs and their lows, what they're most excited about, what they're worried about. And often, as I'm sure you can imagine, couples have a countdown till the wedding. Sometimes they even have a timer on their phone. 6 months to go, 3 months to go, a month, 2 weeks, each day leading up to that moment in which they are standing under the chuppah, ready to meet their beshert. But a few years ago, I met a couple who told me, we don't have a countdown, but we have a count up. And what they decided is that they would count every day from the beginning of their first date through each anniversary. And so every single day, they mark how many days they've been together. Oh, everyone's like, that's a lot of work. But I think it's their beautiful way of saying to each other, every second. Yes, every second. Every day together is a gift. It's a moment to be treasured. I've been thinking about this idea of counting because we count all the time. We count how many minutes there are left in a sermon, right? No, that's not what you're thinking about. Maybe we count money, both in terms of what we have and what we're willing to give. We count how far someone can run. We count how many miles we've traveled, how many accomplishments we've achieved. We even count our losses. And it happens to be right now, as you may know, that we are in a season of counting. It's the counting of the Omer. We count the nights from the second night of Pesach through Shavuot, in which we ready ourselves through this period to receive the Torah. But I was thinking, okay, we count all of these things: time, days, nights, measurements, milestones, but there seems to be one thing missing, at least according to Jewish tradition, that we don't count, or at least we're not supposed to count. We don't count Jews. Now you may counter and say, but Rabbi, I know that we need 10 adult Jews for a minyan. We need 10 adults in order to say the Kaddish to help those who are grieving and in order to join as a community together. And it's true. We do need 10 adult Jews. But it's a minhag, it's a custom, to not verbally look around the sanctuary or look around the chapel and count. Now, we might look around and say, I think we have enough, we can start. Or you know what, we're just not ready. But why? Why don't we count Jews? I want you to hear the verse from Hosea. Here's perhaps the reason from the prophet. And the number of children of Israel shall be as the sand of the sea, which shall neither be measured nor counted. In a sense, I think what the prophet is saying is that the sum of our people is greater than its parts. We should never be divided against each other one by one, because if you understand a Jew, you know that the strength of the Jewish people is exactly that. There is nothing. And I truly believe we have seen this year. There is nothing that can dismantle the unity of the Jewish people. In other words, we don't count Jews because we don't need to, or we shouldn't need to. Because when there is a crisis in the community, when there is a crisis in Israel, when someone in our community needs to say Kaddish, when Jews fall and need someone to help them get back up, Jews are taught, show up. As the Talmud says, Kol Yisrael aravim ze bazeh, all of Israel is responsible for one another. But the Torah is very specific in the ways that we're meant to show up for each other. Very specific in the ways that God expects from humanity and what we should expect from each other. Rabbi Simlai teaches the following. The beginning of the Torah displays acts of loving kindness, and the end of the Torah displays acts of loving kindness. What does this mean? Well, when Adam and Eve discover that they're naked in the Garden of Eden, and they immediately are filled with an internal shame. What does God do? God immediately provides them with clothes. And when Moshe dies, what happens? It's God that buries him. As Rabbi Shai-Held teaches, the heart of Jewish religion is a God of love and kindness who summons God's people to live lives of love and kindness, to act with love, to show up when needed, not to be counted, but rather to be counted upon. That's the essence of being a Jew. This is what it means to walk in God's ways. A few weeks ago, in honor of the beginning of Mental Health Awareness Month, the community learned from Zach Williams. Zach Williams is comedian Robin Williams' son. He himself, Zach, has been struggling for years in regard to his own mental health challenges. And so when he stood before our community, everyone asked, what's the answer? Because he was standing before the community as a healthier man, much healthier than these years have provided him. And what he says is he believes that some of the antidotes to mental health struggles are the following. Certainly to establish a strong regimen when it comes to mental health hygiene. But also, listen to what he said here in a synagogue. He said an antidote to struggle is by being in service to others. And I said to Zach, I'm really grateful you said that because you're speaking in a synagogue, a place where we are meant to be in service to each other, in service to God. And I said to him that night, I think what you mean is that you receive much more in return when you choose to give of your heart. I'm often asked, Rabbi, what's the purpose of life? And there's an answer that my Rabbi Shai-Held gives. It's most aligned with Zach Williams' message, and the answer is the following. We are called by God to be loving and to act lovingly. So I stand here this morning with a message, but also with a few requests, because I hope you know that in the morning and in the evening, here at Sinai Temple, we have a daily minyan in which we pray together as a community, and we help those that are bereft, those that are grieving, those that are commemorating a yahrzeit, an anniversary of a loved one's death, and those that want to come to pray because, frankly, it is better to be together than alone. Monday through Friday, Cone Chapel, 7:30 in the morning, 5:45 in the evening, Sundays, 8:30 in the morning, 5:45 in the afternoon. I'm saying this, I know you could look it up on our website, but I'm saying it in front of all of you because don't think to yourself for one moment, oh, they don't need me. Show up. Be loving and act lovingly, be counted upon, because that is why we exist in this world. Because I have the Bima, a few more requests. On June 4th, 6 p.m., I want you to join me as we gather together as a community and learn about ways that we construct what we're calling our caring circles. Circles in which we will discuss ways that we can show up for each other during Shiva, during times of mourning. Ways we can show up for each other for Bikur Cholim, visiting the sick, visiting those that are ill. Showing up for each other when we perform one of the holiest mitzvot we have in our tradition, the act of tahara, which is burying the dead in the holiest and most dignified of ways. And we're gathering together to think about ways to honor our smachot, to honor the joys in our congregation, from birth to b'nai mitzvah, to engagement, to weddings, to anniversaries. But we need you to help us brainstorm in order to figure out how best to be there for one another. That's June 4th at 6 p.m. But if you think to yourself, oh, Rabbi, that's so far away, then come back tomorrow for our mitzvah day, 10:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m., in which we help one another and help this community. Our tradition is tricky because when we don't count, it means that someone or something isn't held accountable. Because if you know that you're number 8 in the minyan and you don't show up, I can tell you exactly who to call or who's at fault. But then it means that if we don't count who's held accountable, all of us are. We are responsible for the well-being of this community. As Rabbi Held reminds us, Judaism's message is clear: resist the urge to flee. If you want to be a religious person, learn to be present for another person when they are in pain. There's a story from Jewish lore that I want to share with you about two brothers who were very close with one another. One brother had a large family and the other brother was a single person. And together they would grow wheat on their separate properties, again, very close. So when harvest time arrived, each one was astounded by the amount of grain they had each acquired. And they felt so incredibly blessed. But the single brother said to himself, my brother has a wife and children. I really don't need all of this grain. So I'm going to add to his pile so he has grain in the future for his family. Well, you can imagine what the other brother said. The other brother thought to himself, I have children who will take care of me in my old age. I really don't need all of this grain. I'm going to provide for my single brother to make sure that he has a strong future. So night after night, they would each take from their piles and put it in the other brother's, but they couldn't understand when they would wake up in the morning why their piles remained the same. Except one night, the two brothers, by accident, going through this ritual of placing grain in the other's pile, bumped into each other. And smiles, of course, formed on their faces, and they looked at each other, knowingly understanding exactly what had occurred for the past few weeks. And the two of them fell into each other's arms in the most beautiful embrace, for they knew that they had experienced the essence of love. Well, the legend goes that that very spot, the exact spot where those two brothers embraced with love, well, that's the place that the Beit HaMikdash, the holy temple in Jerusalem, was built exactly upon the foundation of where love exists. Our central place of worship was built upon a place of chesed, kindness, generosity, and open hearts. So no, Jews don't count people. We're not meant to be counted, but rather counted upon. We count on each other, and most certainly, as modeled through God and those that came before us, we count on love. Shabbat Shalom.